Hi, Gabby. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm really excited because, first of all, go Bears, another
Yeah.
UC Berkeley alum, as well as someone who went to Bain as a management consultant
Yeah.
and building up an amazing social enterprise in Jakarta, Indonesia. So, just an incredible amount of firepower is coming from you, Gabby.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Yeah. No, I know. Fellow bear and fellow Bainey. So go Bears.
I know, and I think the first time we met, we were both reminiscing about the Indonesian food that was right next to campus, Jakarta,
Oh
and
yes.
how I think that was maybe that's where all the Berkeley Indonesian Student Association, the Singapore Student
Singaporean.
Association,
Yes, yes.
would all hang out, right? There's the cross border unity
No,
around
exactly.
food. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately it's no longer there, but it's okay. It was nice while it lasted.
Oh, yeah, I know. Time flies indeed. So,
Exactly.
Gabby, for those who don't know you yet, who are you?
Yeah, so I'm an Indonesian American and also an ex-consultant who's very passionate about education and how it can be used to quote unquote level the playing field, specifically in an Indonesian context. So for those who don't know me, I'm currently building a social enterprise startup known as Bolu. We empower MSMEs in Indonesia by helping to teach them how to sell online and giving them the resources to be successful. So we are currently a community of about 50,000 MSMEs and growing. Majority are women, and it's been a great journey so far to be able to help them out, especially during this coronavirus. Yeah.
And tell us more about what was it like growing up? Because you grew up in Indonesia and America. So, what was that like?
Yeah. So, where do I begin? I was born in Jakarta, and was here up until the '98 riots. And it was about then that my family decided to move to the United States. So we all packed, headed over to LA, and spent the majority of my childhood in Los Angeles. For university, then I moved up to the Bay, not too far, to UC Berkeley, where I was there, studied sociology and also economics. And that was where I fell in love with education, or um, just the idea that education can really help to level the playing field and allow for social mobility. Um, then I got there. It was there in Berkeley that I also in the Indonesian community. Met some of my closest friends who are also Indonesian. And also during my time there, I had done a few internships back in Indonesia too. So that was what made me start moving to Indonesia, especially seeing as how there's a huge talent gap at that time. So I decided that after college, I was going to start a career in Southeast Asia. Luckily, managed to get a career in Bain, became part of the Jakarta office, and I left about a year ago, right when COVID started to pick up, to start or to join this social enterprise with my co-founders, with the dream to help MSMEs during that time. Yeah, so that's just a little bit of backstory. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's a quite a common story for a lot of Indonesians that have been impacted by the Jakarta riots. And
Yeah.
so, what was it like? Do you remember much about it, about the move? Because do you remember anything about whether it was abrupt or how your parents explained to you growing up?
Yeah. So to be honest, I don't remember much of it, but I do remember when I moved over, I knew no English at all. And um, when I started school and everything, did not even know how to communicate, how to ask where the bathroom was. And so, embarrassing story, but I ended up like peeing in my pants because I just couldn't speak the language. So it was a rough move, but my parents went over. They moved over. My dad actually started a business over there too, so come from a family of entrepreneurs. And from there, we were able to grow the business. And now my family is all there with no. So it's only me back here now. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it like growing up in America with those Indonesian roots? I guess you must have eaten Indonesian food, but how did you think of home? Yeah.
Yeah. So growing up, it was quite interesting. I think I was very grateful because it's very Asian. So school, my high school at least, we were predominantly Asian, 80%. And most of my friends came from immigrant families, and so we all kind of had similar upbringing. I didn't feel very uncomfortable at all there, and it was really great just being able to share kind of that Asian American background with all of them. In terms of Indonesian background, didn't have too many Indonesian friends growing up. I remember from coming of about 3,000, we had uh, 10 Indonesians in the entire school, which I guess you could say that it's not a very small number, but compared to we're very outnumbered. But growing up, I think it wasn't uncomfortable, but definitely was not in tune with my Indonesian culture. Um, of course, my parents did speak it to me at home, but respond back in English. So the move what solidified that heritage and culture.
And that's interesting, right? Because there you and then you go to UC Berkeley and you're starting to have this process where you're saying, okay, my parents have migrated to America and I want to work in Southeast Asia. So how does that process happen?
Yeah. So to be very honest, if you had asked me when I was had first started university, whether or not I would move back to Indonesia, my first response, immediate response would have been no, never, no. It's hot, lots of mosquitoes. You don't have Chipotle there. um, but for me, it started off uh, in the Indonesian Student Association. Actually, had in during college, I by chance I had my floor mates were Indonesian, that exposed me to the whole Indonesian community. And year after year in college, I started to get more to the point where I considered and which I did for 3 years actually. And at that time it was really great because uh, Grab or Uber and Gojek were picking up, and so it was extremely easy to get around. So I saw the possibility and could start considering the possibility of moving back to Southeast Asia, especially towards the end of my college career. Things were starting to pick up here. There's so much growth and so much potential even now. So it just made a lot for me to move here, especially in the tech industry, compared to I think home, quote unquote, where everything was a lot more structured, a lot more. Everything here is a lot more exciting.
So there you are at UC Berkeley, obviously, and you make a decision to go work at Bain, and you decide to make the move to do that in Southeast Asia. So those are two very big decisions, right? So how did that happen?
Yeah, so I knew I knew in college that I knew Bain was heavily recruiting for their Jakarta and Southeast Asia office because it had just opened up. I think even the Bain Indonesia office is less than 10 years old right now, and I saw that as like a possibility. And so when I had gone through applications and I had applied to consulting, I actually applied all of those jobs in Southeast Asia, either Singapore or Jakarta. Um, and to be honest, it wasn't too difficult of a decision, um, especially knowing that my experience in Indonesia had been so positive, and also I did have relatives in Indonesia, although not immediate family, but I had people who I could ask. if I needed it, if I did come back and I that support. Yeah.
But how? Why? So, you're just hanging out with Indonesians, you're eating at Jakarta, sure, there's still a big jump,
Yeah.
right? Because you're making a decision to be a consultant, fine, I get it. Like, let's default to
Yes.
consulting. I mean, I say this as someone who also ended up going to consulting after. And then the thing is, you also made a geographic decision as well. Was it like hard? Was it easy? What else were you weighing at that point of time?
Yeah. So maybe a little something to make things like more to make things a little more understandable. At that time, I had also started dating my boyfriend, who and he is also a alumni. So actually, he got an offer at Bain and in the Jakarta office. I was recruiting. I was like, okay, you know what? I'll also apply. And I knew I wanted to be in Southeast Asia, so that's when I started applying things. So I think having him in the picture really made the decision a lot easier. Having him was also a big support. So yeah, maybe I should have mentioned.
Now this is very understandable. I mean,
Yes,
because it is a big move. Well, I mean, you got to do it, right? Lots of
exactly,
people do that same move. Yeah,
exactly.
for both the personal and the professional. So, and it's a great combination, right? And what a
Yeah,
power couple. Oh, I'm assuming. Uh,
yeah.
I,
No,
yeah,
I
you're
know.
still
Yeah,
still going strong.
still are, and he actually he's also he's currently in Kitabisa. So we've moved on from consulting to do some good. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. What a power couple. Okay, so that's a good story. Still going strong. I was like, whoops. Like, hey. So okay, so there you are. That makes a lot of sense. So you're there. It's wait for you get home, and be there. And of course, when you actually did move to Bain and do the internship and do the job, there must have been some culture shock, right? So tell us more about what that was like.
Yeah. So the culture shock didn't come specifically from, but it came more when I first moved to Indonesia. I didn't really experience because I feel that Jakarta very westernized, and also me having grown up in a very Asian American culture, we kind of met in the middle. So it wasn't too difficult to get accustomed here, but it did come once I left Bain into Bolu, actually, because a big portion of my team, they didn't come from universities, and they didn't have that westernized culture that I. So it came as a bigger shock then. I think I Indonesian, which is really great because I feel like my Indonesian has improved greatly since I left. The biggest shock for me is came more from the cultural level in terms of speaking. I have been told that I'm very direct. I would argue otherwise. So I've learned on that aspect a little bit more. Uh, how should I say this? A little bit more toned down with my words. Yeah, so I think that was the biggest I had to make.
That's a big tip actually for a lot of people. And so there you are, and it's interesting that you're at Bain. And what did you learn while you're at Bain as a management consultant?
Ooh, lots of things. Would really recommend becoming a consultant once you when you first learned a lot. Actually, I think number one, definitely um, the data analysis side. Before going into Bain, I knew nothing about Excel, knew nothing points or communicating using data. That was a huge plus point for me joining in. I left Bain with a very solid toolkit in that aspect. Number two, I learned how to communicate my thoughts in a way that is a lot more clear. I think one thing that consultants really emphasize is communicating for results, right? And so um, that you're able to put everything in a way, but at the same time creates the impact. And number three, I think Bain is kind of more on the the client management aspect of being able to um, not just communicate with them, but uh, see relationships with clients. So one thing in Indonesia, very thankful that I got to be a part of the Jakarta office because um, I was able to learn the whole Indonesian client culture. Uh, Singapore, Jeremy, but in Indonesia, there's a very thin line between like friends and clients. And so what that was one Bain really taught me also, and very thankful for that. Have
Yeah, and having learned all that, what was the reason why you decided to build this Bolu?
Yeah. So to be very honest, coming into consulting, that I didn't want to stay for long. I knew that I wanted to come in to build it and to learn, but I was very passionate about education. I want something where I could teach people and give back to build my own skill set. And so I think last year, so better to paint the context. Left Bain last year, so around June 2020 when COVID was growing or picking up, and saw the impact that it made on Indonesians, especially in the MSME sector. And I had been in touch with my co-founders at Bolu since January, and I leaving was it was sitting in my heart, but I hadn't made the decision. Once COVID started peaking, I decided that okay, you know what, rather than stay in Bain and make slides or continue on my career, I think it would be a lot more meaningful for actually help people during this time, help them get through this pandemic, help their businesses through. And so it just felt like the right time and the right moment during that time. That was what pushed me to leave. Yeah.
Ooh, leaving. That's
I know,
what
I
was it like to
know.
leave? I mean, Bain is such a beautiful place, right? It's a little utopia of like
Yeah.
great colleagues, great work, great pay, great culture, and honestly, in retrospect, probably great bosses on average. Those,
Yeah.
obviously there's a range of bosses, but still, the worst boss was actually pretty good in the grand scheme of things.
Yes,
Uh,
agree.
so, how do you think about all of that?
I definitely before I left, I weighed plans. I had talked to a lot of people too, and a lot of them told me, hey, are you sure you want to leave? Like this is the like, COVID isn't going anywhere. There's a huge risk factor. This could fail. Also, you won't get the same learning. You won't get the same mentorship, the same cushion in Bain as elsewhere. But what really helped me make myself, if I this opportunity, would I regret it? And the answer was yes. And um, at the end of the day, I took it, sent in my resignation letter, and the rest is
Wow, what a jump. And what was the transition like, right? Because one day you're a consultant and obviously you've been working on it a little bit already on the side. But what was the difference between working on that part time versus working on that full time?
a big jump, big difference. The first thing that I biggest shock to me, or the biggest hurdle that I was the mindset, because I think when you're a lot of it is very cushioned, right? And every decision that you make, you've all either taken the experience from else going to work 100% of the time. But for entrepreneurship or for something new, it's all about failure and being able to learn from all your mistakes and really be able to okay with not being right 50% of the time, and how to just because that's not something that they teach in consulting, unfortunately, and something that I had to learn outside. And the second was team. I think, you know, uh, I was somewhat part of recruiting, trying to convince great young talent but not in a way where I had to actively reach out to people and negotiate salary, convince them to join my venture that succeed. So I think those two were the biggest things that I had to learn right off the bat. Yeah.
Wow, that feels tough. How did you cope with that, personally?
Yeah. To be honest, it was very difficult. It was a very difficult first 3 to 6 months. Um, I think personally, during that time, I had a lot of self reflection. I also reached out to a lot of people. I read a lot of articles too, and having that support really, really helped. Actually, I think a lot of people always say that it's lonely at the top, and having a good, strong support system and people to ask questions to or ask experience from is key to success in especially in entrepreneurship. Yeah, like they say, in Bain, we always have mentors in Bain to reach out to, like whether they're informal or formal, they're always readily available and provided to us, right? But once you're outside, once you're in entrepreneurship, you kind of have to make those connections and reach out to those people on your own. And that, I think, that support system outside of Bain, well, and within Bain also, was what got me through those 3 to 6 months.
How does a founder build their own mentor network?
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, I think a little bit of everything here and there. So I consider, the term mentor, I consider not just like anyone can be a mentor, right, Jeremy? And so for me, I find my mentors anywhere. So anywhere from old bosses that I've interned for to people that I've been introduced to by mutual relationships to even kind of like family friends or even family. And so my mentor network, my mentor board of directors, is a little bit of everyone, because I think, at least for me, I um, I learn different things from different people, and I try to build my experience from different people. So from a more professional standpoint, or from how to build a team, I'll lean on one mentor. But if I want to work more towards culture, then I'll ask another mentor. And so for me, I built it from all over, not just one source. And I do recommend entrepreneurs to have that kind of to have that way of building, because from people who come from multiple different backgrounds, one. Yeah.
And when you have so many different mentors, how do you decide whether something is good advice versus bad advice versus what you actually have to decide for yourself?
Yeah, good question. I think that was something I struggled with early on, because I used to take everyone's advice at face value, but I learned from mistakes. I learned from just following right from what they say and applying it into my lives. I learned that that's not always the best advice. So I guess you could say that I learned from trial and error, applying and then seeing if it works for me. If it doesn't, then okay, uh, I set it aside and then try to apply it with my own twist. Yeah, so unfortunately, there's no easy way. I think I've gotten better. in the past year, sifting through what is relevant and what's not. But still, for me, it's a learning experience, and I'm uh, still learning from trial and error.
I like the phrase you said, don't take advice at face value.
Yeah.
So how does that actually work? So you go up to someone and someone's like, oh, this idea sucks, or this idea is good, or you should do A, or you should not do B. How do you get past the face value of that advice? Because, it's half an
Yeah.
hour, 1 hour conversation.
Yeah. So uh, for me, I know that as a founder, I'm the person who knows my company best. And no matter how much explanation that I give within 1 hour, my mentor or whoever I'm speaking with will never know what I know. And they'll never have as much backstory as I do. And so at the end of the day, they may be able to give me the right or the right feedback for that specific amount of information that I give, but maybe like maybe for a lot of other situations it might not apply. And so um yeah, it's it's been difficult. I think when I'm in this situation, definitely I absorb everything. I don't I I sit there and I try to absorb as much as I can and learn from them. And then it's not until after the conversation, then I'll sit down and go through my thoughts, go through notes, and try to see, okay, what is applicable, what may not be as so.
What advice do you have to give to mentors who give advice? I mean, so I mean, obviously, we're talking about the defensive side, which is like, how do we receive and triage and prioritize? What advice
Yeah.
would you give to mentors out there who are talking to founders?
Do you feel attacked, Jeremy? I'm sorry if you do.
No, I'm not feeling attacked. I'm just kind of curious now.
Yeah. No, actually, that's a great question. What advice would I give to mentors? Um, I think uh be actually mm, listen as much as you can, but at the same time understand that maybe their circumstance may not be one-on-one to yours. um, so one example for this is I've talked to a lot of mentors who are in the ed tech space, right? Because so Bolu, you could think of it as an somewhat of an ed tech social enterprise in a way. For them, they may know what works well in other countries, more developed countries, right? But when you apply it to a more Indonesian perspective or culture, it doesn't always work, especially with the circumstance of the technological infrastructure, the culture of not appreciating education just yet. And so sometimes when I get feedback or tips from mentors who are more used to an American culture or an American perspective, I learned to take what they say with a grain of salt, but then at the same time, like apply it to an Indonesian lens as much as I can. Yeah. So understand the differences. And if we don't apply your feedback, it's okay. We listen, we absorb everything. But sometimes certain things just can't be applied as easily. So that is what I would say.
Okay, got it. So if you're American, don't be too American, and if you're
Yes.
an asshole, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, because I've had multiple people, Jeremy, that they tell me, "Oh no, you should do it. You should push it more from a tech standpoint." But to be very honest, Indonesia, yes, we're a lot more technologically advanced than we were 5 years ago, but there's still a lot of Indonesia that isn't able to keep up with the development. I feel that the infrastructure still needs a lot of work, and at the same time, like just the culture and the habit that you need to build, it's not there yet. And so as much as we would like to push for tech advancement, the demand isn't quite there yet, and the education isn't quite there yet either. Yeah, so this is more from an education standpoint, but
yeah,
yes.
that makes a lot of sense. And so
Yeah.
there you are, and so far you've been obviously tackling a lot of different advice and everything. And one interesting thing is that you've been helping a lot in the Southeast Asia and Indonesia context. I'm just kind of curious. Obviously, helping a lot of small sellers and kind of like get online. How has the pandemic been for them and for your team?
Yeah. It's been, to be very honest, it's been very rough. I think a lot of our sellers are still micro, and many of them are offline. And so having to teach them how to go online has not been easy. And um, well, first of all, their revenues have been hit. Are a lot of them before the pandemic were relying on their daily profits to keep alive, and because of the pandemic, they have their offline sales have completely been shut off. And so we specifically have been trying to reach out to as many people as possible, through both online and offline means, to teach them how to go online. So for us, the very minimal is just knowing how to sell through WhatsApp, because as long as you're able to sell through WhatsApp, you can sell to previous clients or previous customers and still be able to have some cash flow. um, so yeah, it's been difficult. Unfortunately, there's some people who haven't been able to take on that, I have to sell online mindset, until much later, and a lot of them, it's been very difficult. Yeah. But for others, I know for some of our sellers, actually, they've seen a huge uplift, since the COVID situation. But for the majority, like 90%, I would say it's hit them quite hard. Yeah. But in terms of my team, luckily enough, we started out during the pandemic, and so for us, we've had no layoffs. But last week, actually, we did have our first death, in the team, which has hit our team quite hard. But I'm very fortunate to have a great team who is very strong and very positive thinking. So we're learning to cope and get through this together as best as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think pandemic's been terrible, and before this, yes, condolences to obviously your team, and your teammates' family. And it's been an interesting time for everyone just trying to build and survive through this pandemic, both on a personal basis as well as a company basis. Yeah,
Yeah. It hasn't been easy for anyone. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So, Gabby, I mean, I would love to, kind of like start wrapping things up here. Could you tell us about a time that you personally have been brave?
Yeah. So I think the one, um, the most recent situation for me is definitely my career move. I know that, especially amidst the pandemic, my parents, my relatives, even a few of my personal and professional mentors mentioned to me, "Hey, are you sure? Are you sure you want to leave in the midst of the pandemic? You won't have that solid pay. Have you won't have that strong backing, even for career as well." Um, but yeah, at least for me, the most recent time that that was really a huge jump for me was switching careers and switching from having a more corporate role into becoming a founder. Yeah, it's been a journey, Jeremy.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like you really understood what it meant to become a founder before you became a founder? Or is it something you realized later?
No, no. So, yeah, that no, 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 no. I think it was a little bit a mix of both bravery as well as ignorance. I feel like with a lot of founders, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, but you really don't know until you get in there and start building it from scratch. Yeah, you really don't know, because people will tell you all these stories, you'll read all about these things, but once you're in the situation, it's easier said than done sometimes. And whatever you learn in the books is sometimes thrown out the window, and sometimes you just have to keep going, keep at it. Yeah. So to be very honest, no, not at all.
What would you say that you didn't know then that you know now?
Yeah, I think, it's a very good question. One of the things that I've learned, and I think I mentioned earlier, is um, the founder's mindset is probably the most important, because that will really drive you and your ability to get keep your team going. Um, that and also knowing that it's okay to not have all the answers sometimes. That's why you have your board of director mentors to reach out to, and um, know that it's okay to ask for help. I think Google and YouTube have become my best friend in the past year, in addition to my mentors. Yeah, it's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to just do things while not knowing 100% that things are going to go well. I think, so as someone who came to consulting, that was something that I had to learn, and I wish that the old me knew. It would have saved me a lot of time, a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration.
Yeah. I think, lots of people learn via Google and YouTube, so there's really no shame. I would say I learned most of my
Yeah,
stuff via
oh,
Google and YouTube
exactly.
these days as well.
Exactly.
Um,
A lot of what you learn is actually not in the books. So sometimes the best teachers are those you find on YouTube.
yeah. So there you are, and I'm just so curious, like, if you had a time machine, right, and you travel back 10 years ago to 2011, where were you and what would you share with yourself?
Oh wow, 2011. So I think probably that during that time, um, oh, I was probably still stressing out about jobs and college. I would tell myself back then, work hard, do as much as you can, but sometimes life will play out in ways that you don't expect and you can't control. So do your best, do everything that you possibly can do, but don't spend too much time stressing about things that is out of your control, because yeah, luck, timing, has a big factor, and you just have to roll with the punches sometimes.
What does
Yeah.
rolling with the punches mean to you?
Oh, for me, it's number one, taking opportunities as they come. Don't be completely rigid, and think that, if you have a plan, just sticking to that plan, because the best opportunities and the best things will come unexpectedly. And like for me, for example, right, no idea that I wanted to go to Indonesia, yet I ended up here, and it's the best decision. So take opportunities as they come, and don't limit yourself to just what you think or what you plan for yourself, because you'll really close a lot of doors if you do.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gabby. I'd love to wrap things up by sharing like any good consultant, the top three things I learned from this conversation. The first is thank you so much for sharing about what was it like to grow up in Indonesia and America and your journey on a personal front about getting comfortable and re-immersed back in Indonesia culture to actually make the decision to move back to Jakarta for professional reasons as well as personal reasons. And I think that's a very fair way to think about it. The second is thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of the learnings that you had as a founder and as a Bain consultant, especially regarding like what you took away and what you got trained on at Bain, but also what you learned was different about Indonesia, was different about being a founder, and what is needed to have and receive good, mentorship advice, right? And the final decision is yours, right? They said the founder knows best. And lastly, I think thank you so much for exhibiting the spirit of what you described as rolling with the punches. I think there's so many, tough times that you've gone through both personally as well as professionally. as well as your team during this pandemic. And so I think you really embody that spirit of bravery and rolling with the punches.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy. No, that was very good. Thank you, and thank you for providing the platform also for me to share, and also not just that, but learn from all the others who've been on your podcast as well. Yeah, very
Awesome.
very happy, very happy.
I'm happy to share your story as well. So thank you so much, Gabby. See you.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.